Hello, hello, hi. Good evening. And a special shout out to Table 30, where I'm joined tonight by a whole crew of writers from the great state of Maine, including two of our greatest advocates, our Governor Janet Mills, not just our governor, but more importantly, a published poet, and our senator and our former governor, Angus King. Himself the author of, among other works, Governor's Travels. That's really the name of the memoir. Actually, it's pretty great. It begins with Angus and his wife, Mary. By the way, Mary Harmon, another force for good in the state of Maine. First chapter, they leave the governor's mansion in a Winnebago and they wreck the Winnebago. So I'm grateful to Angus and to Janet not only for their work in making my home state a great place for writers, but also a place where transgender people like me feel like we belong. These are hard days for my people. They are hard days, in fact, for anybody who stands outside the bright lines of American culture. Each week, I hear about a new law designed to make life more difficult, to make it harder to vote, to make it more impossible to take a book written by somebody like me out of the library. But guess what? Just because you've banned The Handmaid's Tale, it's not like there suddenly won't be any more feminists. That's not actually how it works. Banning the 1619 Project doesn't mean that the stain of slavery in this country magically disappears. And banning books by me doesn't mean that there suddenly won't be any more transgender people. All it means is that people will feel alone. All it means is that people will think that the world as it is right now is the only world that there could ever be. When I came out as trans 20 years ago, the question that kept getting asked was, so does this mean you're an activist now? My response was, an activist? No, 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 I'm just a writer. Because my idea of an activist was somebody who, chained themselves to a fence. I thought that activism was for people who were angrier than I was, and more importantly, that it was for people a whole lot braver than I was. I am pretty sure that I don't feel a lot braver than I did 20 years ago, but I do know that I'm angrier. When I came out as trans, my little Lutheran mother told me, don't worry, love will prevail. And I try to remember that when I'm the angriest, that there is a hope that love will prevail in spite of the world's ascendant darkness. But what I've learned is that enabling love to prevail does not mean that you sit there with a blank smile on your face while the world burns around you. For love to prevail, it is necessary to greet the world with fierceness, to push back against injustice with both relentlessness and joy, ferocity and wisdom. So, how do you do that? Well, you do that by creating art, which is maybe the most powerful form of activism that we have. You do that by making music. You do that by writing books. Yeah. Hello. Which is where pen comes in. Of all the work we do, there's nothing more fundamental to our mission than trying to free writers around the world who've been imprisoned for their words. 10 years ago, when Penn honored Larry Kramer, he said, "Theater is too small. We have to think bigger as writers. We have to try and change the world." Well, with respect to Larry, wherever you are tonight, I think he was actually wrong when he said that theater is too small. There's nothing bigger than a play. There's nothing bigger than a poem. There's nothing bigger than, well, a late night comedy show. Because inside each of these things is the most dangerous thing in the world, which is truth. Tonight, Penn's Freedom to Write Award goes to Narges Mohammadi, This evening, as we gather here in New York City, Narges is in a prison in Iran. For what is she imprisoned? For writing about the repression of women, for criticizing the government, for publicizing the plight of prisoners in solitary confinement. For 30 years now, the Iranian authorities have thrown her behind bars again and again, separating her from her husband, Taghi Rahmani, and her twin children. She has been denied access to life-sustaining medication. She has been subjected to prolonged solitary confinement. She's been the victim of psychological torture. For what is she imprisoned? For speaking the truth. You want to know what it means to have courage? Watch this video and learn about the life of Narges Mohammadi. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Accepting the Freedom to Write Award will be Taghi Rahmani, Narges' husband. Taghi is a journalist and an intellectual who, like Narges, has campaigned tirelessly for free expression and human rights in Iran. First jailed when he was 15 years old, he's been described as Iran's most jailed journalist, spending more than 16 years in prison. He was an Amnesty International prisoner of conscience for 14 years. And as you saw in the video, Taghi went into exile in France in 2012 and was joined by the twins in 2015. He has not seen his wife for over a decade. Recently, in response to the protests, prison authorities have even deprived Narges of the comfort of talking to Taghi and their children over the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, Taghi Rahmani.